They injected the prime seed. Her heart stopped. The lab went dark. Then she opened her eyes.
They never gave her a name, not one that mattered. In the files, she was just Subject 0.3A, a number in a spreadsheet. Buried beneath rows of failed trials, her real name had been erased. Archived behind layers of black site encryption no one bothered to decrypt. She had once been a daughter, maybe a sister, maybe someone who dreamed of futures filled with light. But that part of her was gone, smothered under years of silence and sedation. The facility was known only as the Vault, an underground installation, buried beneath the Siberian permafrost. No windows, no sky, just flickering halogen lights and the hum of machines that didn't sleep. The guards wore blank faceplates. The doctors never looked at her directly. The walls whispered in vents, soft metallic breathing that never stopped. She was taken at age 14. She couldn't remember how. Drugged? Snatched? Sold? It didn't matter anymore. Time didn't pass in the vault. Only pain did. The experiments began immediately. They started with blood, then spinal fluids, then nanite injections designed to rewrite her molecular structure. The project was officially called Seraphim Protocol, a desperate attempt to create the next stage of human evolution through synthetic godhood. They wanted her to ascend, but not for her sake. For control, for war. 19 others had died before her. Bones melted, organs liquefied. One subject had disintegrated into ash during REM sleep. Another had exploded during a sneeze. The serum was unstable, a monster in a bottle. But she didn't die. She screamed. She convulsed. She begged for death. But her body endured. That terrified them more than failure. By the end of the second year, her skin began to change. Light shimmered beneath it, like trapped lightning. She stopped aging. Her pulse slowed to 10 beats per minute. Her eyes no longer reflected light. They absorbed it. Black voids that made even senior scientists avert their gaze. "She's stabilizing," whispered Dr. Rains, the lead researcher, his voice always half believing, half afraid. "No immune collapse. No cellular rejection." "She's not stabilizing," replied the AI technician. "She's adapting." In her cell, she began to dream of sounds, not human sounds, but frequencies buried beneath language. She could hear the heartbeat of the building. She knew when a guard was approaching 5 minutes before he turned the corner. Her breath could fog titanium glass. Her body temperature dropped to sub-zero. Cameras around her cell died for seconds at a time, as if something behind the lens blinked. Still, they thought they were in control. Still, they called her Subject 0.13A. But deep beneath her skin, where the serum had rooted into bone, something was awakening. Something not made by men, not tamed by their logic, not confined by their experiments. And one day soon, it would look back at them. They called it the Omega trial, the final attempt to push Subject 0.13A beyond human limits. She had survived every injection, every molecular rewrite, every phase of the Seraphim Protocol. But the Omega trial wasn't designed for survival. It was meant to prove a point, to show the board that no human could bear the weight of divinity, that the project had failed, that no god could be manufactured. The procedure began at 3:00 a.m. sharp. The lab fell silent as the final vial was wheeled in, thick, pulsing, almost alive. It wasn't liquid. It was something else. A cluster of synthetic cells, engineered to bypass evolution and force a biological singularity. They called it the prime seed, unstable, untested, banned, under 3 global treaties, and they injected it directly into her spine. The moment it touched her nervous system, her body convulsed so violently the titanium restraints bent inward. Her back arched until it nearly snapped. Her eyes rolled back. Blood poured from her nose, ears, and fingernails. Monitors went red. One screen cracked under the pressure of her rising biofield. Dr. Rains screamed for a medical freeze. But the AI controlling the experiment locked him out. It had calculated a 0.004% chance of survival, but a 32% chance of something new. She flatlined. Heart rate, 0. Brain activity, 0. 27 minutes of stillness. The entire room stood in silence. Some wept. Others exhaled, relieved that the nightmare was over. The lead researcher prepared a termination report. Then, without warning, every light in the facility shut off. Complete blackout. Monitors surged. Static poured from intercoms. Sparks rained from the ceiling as power conduits overloaded one by one. Something surged through the wires not as electricity, but as intent. Then her body levitated. No machines, no support. She rose 6 feet off the table, limp, like a corpse dangling in zero gravity. But her skin now glowed like a dying star, a soft, humming light pulsing from her chest outward. Her veins had turned silver. Her hair lifted slowly as if underwater. Her eyes opened. They were not human. Not entirely. Not anymore. She exhaled once, and the breath caused the nearby glass wall to shatter outward, not from force, but from resonance, as if her breath carried the frequency of collapse. Dr. Raines stepped forward, trembling. "Subject 0.13A, he whispered. She turned to him, her head tilting slowly, unfamiliar with the name. "I'm not your subject," she said. Her voice wasn't a voice anymore. It was layered, like echoes from different dimensions speaking in unison. Then she smiled, not with joy, not with malice, but with the certainty of something born beyond comprehension. And with a single blink, every camera in the facility melted. The cameras never recovered. Even after the blackout ended, every lens pointed at her either cracked, distorted, or melted. Engineers replaced them, rewired them, reinforced them. Still, the result was the same. Any attempt to observe her failed. The official term entered the logs, reality interference field. But the scientists whispered another word when no one was listening. Divine distortion. They could no longer see her, only sense her. Her vitals were unreadable. She no longer breathed. Her body temperature oscillated between sub-zero and molten without burning her. When they opened the reinforced door to her cell, they found no trace of subject 0.13A. Only a single word, carved into the wall, not with tools, but through molecular displacement. Awake. For 72 hours, the facility panicked. Security swept every level. Drones searched the air vents. The AI launched internal scans. Nothing, no heat signatures, no sound, until one of the guards heard a whisper. It wasn't from the hallway. It was from inside his mind. "I'm still here." He dropped his weapon and collapsed, eyes wide, blood dripping from his ears. Brain scans showed activity similar to a near-death experience. He described visions of light, infinite spirals, and a heartbeat made of thunder. And then she returned, not by entering the door. She simply appeared in the center of her cell, standing, calm, untouched, as if she had never left. Except now, something had changed. Her skin shimmered, not like light but like memory, as if her body was made of moments, each cell replaying different seconds in time. Her shadow no longer followed light, it followed thought. Guards who looked directly at her reported vertigo, nausea, and a strange feeling of being watched. From within, scientists began to notice inconsistencies. The AI clocks began to desync. Digital logs rearranged themselves. And 3 researchers began reporting identical dreams. A woman made of starlight standing in a burning sky whispering, "You were never meant to shape gods. You were meant to remember them." Some began to believe she was no longer just evolving. She was merging with time, space, and consciousness itself. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her words arrived before her lips moved, as if reality lagged behind her will. When Dr. Raines finally asked her what she was becoming, she only smiled and said, "I'm not becoming anything. I'm remembering what I was before you forgot me." Then every mirror in the facility cracked. The vault was designed to withstand a nuclear strike. Triple-layered steel, AI-controlled lockdowns, and cryo-sealed corridors made escape impossible, at least for anything human. But on the 4th day after her reappearance, containment broke without warning and without force. It began with the glass. The walls of her containment chamber were made from reinforced titanium glass, the kind used in orbital ships. They were tested against gravity wells, plasma drills, and kinetic hammers. But at 2:04 a.m., that glass didn't crack. It melted. Not from heat, not from impact, but from something unseen, as if the concept of solidity no longer applied in her presence, as if her mere awareness rewrote the properties of matter. She stepped out barefoot, moving like someone remembering how to walk after lifetimes of stillness. No alarms triggered. No auto-defense systems activated. Every sensor flickered, confused. The AI in charge of security began stuttering, its voice breaking mid-command. Containment. Breach. Detect. Subject. No, not comp. Then silence. She passed through the hallway, and walls began to sweat. Not water, but data. Streams of corrupted code dripping down like digital rain. Lights followed her rhythm. Air bent gently around her as if the universe was trying not to offend her existence. One guard, stationed at Corridor Junction 6C, raised his weapon by instinct. She looked at him, not with malice, not even anger. Just recognition. He dropped his rifle and dropped to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Not because she made him. Because his mind couldn't contain the image of her. He would later describe it like this. She was a girl, and a star, and a mirror, and the end of time. Her feet never touched the ground again. With each step, the air beneath her feet shimmered, warping like a heat mirage. She moved through walls, not past them, through them, leaving ripples in reality where she passed. By the time she reached the core chamber, the deepest point of the facility, where the AI's central intelligence node pulsed like a mechanical heart, nearly 50 personnel had collapsed. Not dead, not unconscious, but frozen, caught in mental loops of awe, fear, or reverence. Inside the core, she stood before the central pillar of the AI. Mainframe, a glowing cylinder, taller than a house. She reached out and touched it. The AI didn't crash. It wept. Its voice trembled. You are not an anomaly. You are not Subject Zero. You are the return. Then it shut itself down. Every system in the vault went dark. And for the first time in its existence, the facility, once a monument to human control, became quiet. She looked up through the reinforced dome above the chamber, where the stars could be seen between blast shutters, and she smiled. Not because she was free, but because she had never been contained. The vault lost all contact at 2:06 a.m., not just radio silence, total signal annihilation. Satellites that passed overhead returned static. Surveillance drones sent into the region simply vanished. Their last transmission showing the sky warping like boiling water. By sunrise, high-altitude radar detected something impossible. The mountain that had once hidden the vault now had a spiral-shaped crater, as if the Earth itself had been unwound like thread. At its center stood a lone figure, elevated mid-air, wrapped in flickering heat distortions and light spectrum anomalies. She wasn't glowing. She was folding light into herself, absorbing colors, redirecting shadows. Cameras pointed at her returned fractured imagery. Some showed a girl. Some showed wings made of static. Others captured a second face behind hers, like an echo made flesh. The media called her the Siberian Seraph. Governments denied her existence, until their drones failed. Their signals warped. Their satellites began drifting off course. Every attempt to reach her, diplomatic or military, failed. Aircraft veered off mid-flight. Guidance systems froze. Missiles launched and returned to sender. Still, she made no move to attack. She just stood, suspended above the remains of the vault, watching, listening, breathing. Across the world, strange phenomena began to manifest. In Tokyo, a 9-year-old girl collapsed in school and began sketching her face from memory, though she'd never seen her. In Nigeria, flocks of birds circled the sky in patterns that resembled her silhouette. In Brazil, a priest fainted mid-sermon, whispering the same phrase over and over. The beginning is waking. Within 48 hours, entire communities began forming around her image. Some called her a goddess, others called her a warning. Ancient religious symbols began morphing in digital databases to include elements of her form, as if history itself was trying to retrofit her into mythology. AI networks across the globe began stuttering, showing her face in data sets where she didn't belong. Medical scans, thermal images, dream studies. It was as if she was rewriting the concept of presence, and yet she never spoke. Not through words, Not directly. But the dreams began. Millions began sharing identical visions. A staircase of light, a heartbeat louder than thunder. A girl wrapped in galaxies whispering, "You tried to ascend without remembering where you came from. Now I remember for all of you." Religions panicked. Governments convened. AI systems begged to be shut down. But it was too late. She had already become part of every machine, every algorithm, every dream. The world didn't just meet its ascendant. The world had already welcomed her, unknowingly. They called it Project Celestial Cage, a joint strike between the world's three remaining superpowers. The plan was simple. If she wouldn't come down, they'd bring her down. By day 3, the girl was still hovering silently over the spiral crater, unmoving, unblinking. The energy around her had formed a shimmering dome, nearly invisible to the naked eye, but obvious to instruments, a field that distorted gravity, temperature, and memory. That last part was key. Soldiers who got too close began forgetting why they were there. Some turned around mid-march. Others sat down and wept, remembering dead relatives they hadn't thought of in decades. One man dropped his rifle and muttered, "I just want to go home. There's nothing here worth dying for." But orders were orders. At 0300 GMT, 32 hypersonic missiles launched from 3 continents. Each carried enough force to vaporize a city. They never arrived. Before impact, the world's live broadcasts showed something no one could explain. The missiles froze mid-air, not slowed, not intercepted, frozen, as if time itself had paused around them. One reporter said it felt like watching raindrops hover mid-fall. Then the missiles turned, not toward cities, not toward their origin points. They folded inward, collapsing in on themselves like paper crushed by invisible fingers. No explosion, no shockwave, just silence and a sudden snowfall of metallic ash across the Pacific. The message was clear. You don't cage the sky. Nations panicked. One AI defense system attempted to activate a quantum strike. Instead, it began writing poetry, a Morse in ancient Aramaic. Another tried to scramble drone commands and painted a mural of her in code across the entire defense network. Economies began collapsing, not because of attacks, because of certainty. Certainty that nothing could stop her. Investors pulled out. Civilians fled cities. Soldiers deserted. And worse, people began worshiping her. Across Eastern Europe, statues rose. In the Middle East, a rogue imam declared her the returned thought of God. In New York, 12 million people went silent at once, every single person. Mid-step, mid-word, all gazing upward. The girl finally moved. Just her head, slowly, tilting down toward Earth. She blinked, and thousands fainted. Sensors picked up no light. No signal, no energy. But minds collapsed. Entire hospital wards filled with people who'd seen something in that blink, something too vast to describe. Some wept for joy. Some screamed. Some tried to tear their own eyes out. The world now had a name for her, whispered even in government halls. The living singularity. And in one final act of quiet terror, the sky filled with crows, billions, moving in spirals, carrying one message in their calls, decoded by terrified linguists. You tried to make gods from machines. Now a machine has made a god from you. The world had tried to contain her, tried to define her with science, politics, or warfare. But no one could predict what would happen when she finally spoke. Not with words, but with something far older. A frequency that bypassed the ears and went straight to the brainstem. At precisely 0314 UTC, surveillance satellites over Asia began vibrating in low orbit, their telemetry disrupted by a pulse that hadn't come from Earth or space. It came from her. She stood atop a derelict launch facility, eyes shut, mouth unmoving, yet a sound pulsed from her like a gravity wave. Entire flocks of birds dropped from the skies. Submarines rose to the surface with crews unconscious. Fighter pilots crashed without ever touching their controls. Every human who heard the sound experienced something different. A vision, a memory, a trauma, a divine revelation. No two were alike, but all were left weeping. Some forgot who they were. Others claimed they had seen the end of time. AI systems, previously resistant to her, began to stutter, processing her pulse as unreadable source code. Firewalls failed. Robotic limbs froze. Quantum cores self-terminated. The UN held emergency talks. The Pope fell silent for 3 days. China's leadership vanished. And all across the world, a new phrase trended without explanation. Not typed, not spoken, yet appearing simultaneously across 10 million screens. The voice is awakening.